In this video, I'm going to be installing this new radiator and these new hoses in this Nissan Titan. This isn't too big of a job, but it's going to take a bit of time to get everything out. The radiator comes out from under here, so we'll have to remove the intake. We're going to have to remove the fan shroud, fan and hoses, and the whole thing will slide back and then come up. We're going to need some sockets, some pliers, some new coolant to refill it, and some new ATF as well. This does have a built-in transmission cooler. We'll need a bucket and drain pan as well. First thing to do, if you have a skid plate, remove it. This is the Pro 4X. It has the steel or aluminum skid plate. So we've got 4 hex bolts and 2 12mm bolts on the bottom. And second, we're going to remove this intake. Okay, here's the radiator drain port, and when I drained and filled it last time, I broke off the end of it. So I can't get that open right now. So we're just going to go for the lower radiator hose, which is right here. Let me get a bucket under it. So we actually did really well here and got all in the bucket, no mess. That's the radiator drain now. This hose is empty. I'm just holding it out of the way. I'm going to pull the cap on the radiator so it drains better. Next, I want to remove the fan shroud and then the fan. I've got some 10s on there. I've got an 8 here. Got an 8 here for the fan shroud, and the fan shroud does split, so half can come out the top and half can come out the bottom. Start these 2 bolts. Okay, now we can go to these 2 upper radiator hoses. Okay, and get hose clipped on the side of it. There. And these 2 down here are kind of clipped into it. So to pull the shroud, you also have to unclip this hose and this hose, and here's where the top goes into the bottom. Undo this clip here and this clip right here. And now we should be able to pull the top part up and leave the bottom. There's our fan shroud here. Top piece, pulled it straight up from the top. The bottom piece, I also pulled it up from the top, but I just rotated it around. And I've got marks here where I'm going to trim it. I'm going to do a cut down and across. And I think I'm going to trim this around as well. These 10mm bolts, I was kind of holding the fan from turning with a screwdriver. I just used a box wrench. Now this should come off, and we can pull that up the top. There's our clutch fan. Might give that a little wash off. Yeah, now we got less room for the radiator. Okay, at this point we can undo our transmission hoses from the radiator. Here and here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pinch it off because I don't want to drain the transmission. Pinch it there. And I'm not replacing any hoses yet. I'm leaving them all attached so I can match them up one by one. So a lot of these clamps are rotting, and these see, that one's no good. These hoses are starting to deteriorate. I've got no leaks yet, but it's good to get them replaced before they do start leaking. Same thing, we'll pull that one off and put a drain plate underneath it. We'll get a little bit out of that, I think. Got all the hoses disconnected now. Now we've got our 2 top radiator bolts. Those are 8mm. Those come out pretty easily. Okay, we've also got our AC condenser that's attached to the radiator, and those bolts are right in there. We can undo those, or we can push a radiator back. It's going to be easier to undo the condenser first though. Okay, everything is undone, I think. We have an AC condenser hose that's kind of in the way on the left side. And you can push your radiator back, and it is sitting on pegs, and it can lift up. So after some more investigation, there's another 8mm bolt here that I can undo, and that will separate that line from the radiator, so we can pull it off separately. So I'm just going to undo that. And that is the transmission cooler. It's hard to see. It's on the front of the radiator right here, sandwiched between the radiator and the AC condenser. So there's another 8mm bolt here as well. Okay, radiator is out. It's a little bit dirty, not too bad. I'm not sure if we need to reuse any of these clips and stuff yet. We'll keep the cap. These are what hold the AC condenser in place, and I think that was the rubber where the radiator was sitting. While I'm in there, I'm going to replace the serpentine belt, idler pulley, and tensioner. If you haven't done that, it's a good time to do that. So looking in here right now, nothing's holding the transmission cooler, and that's a fairly significant transmission cooler. I don't know why you would need to add a different external one. I guess if you don't have the tow package, maybe you don't have that and you do need it to add another one. Here's our AC condenser. We got a lot of room here. We have got good access to our idler pulley, water pump, and tensioner if you want to do those. And we did drain about a gallon of coolant from the radiator. We lost a little bit out of a reservoir. We might drain that anyways. And we didn't really drain any transmission fluid. I'm guessing there's a little bit of transmission fluid in this radiator. We did break off the transmission cooler nipple there, and we had broken this off before. That's the drain port. So next step in the radiator replacement is I'm going to replace all these hoses. I've got upper radiator hoses, I've got oil cooler hoses, and the reservoir coolant hoses. So we'll give you a good look now, and then we'll do a good look after. I'm doing them now while they're still attached, so I know where they go. Okay, I've got the hoses changed. And the one in here. Got the radiator wiggled in here. It's kind of difficult. Might be good to have a second pair of hands to hold things, because you gotta get the radiator in, and you gotta get the AC condenser sitting on the radiator, and you've got to get the transmission cooler bolted to the radiator. So this is where the brackets are for the AC condenser. And then there was the two, one there and one here, bolt for the transmission cooler. I'm going to start hooking up hose. Actually, I'm going to do the fan next, and then start hooking up hoses after I do the shroud. So fan, shroud, and then hook everything back up. Okay, I did the oil cooler hose there too. I have one more hose, but I can't really reach the other end of it, so I'm going to leave it for now. So the radiator sits on these pegs in the rubber here, and kind of the same thing the AC condenser sits on, has pegs, and it sits in the rubber on the radiator, which are up here. On the fan shroud, we cut out a notch for the air intake tube, and we also cut out the side here because This is going to be pushed in closer to the fan. We don't want it contacting it. Okay, it's actually, you have to put the top in first. So I've got the top fan shroud in. We don't have a perfect fit here anymore. This hose clips in. The upper hose, which I don't have on right now, clips into it as well. The upper fan shroud sits in here. Here, I hooked up this transmission cooler line and it clips in to the shroud there. I'm going to slide up the bottom piece from the bottom and it clips into the top piece. So the bottom shroud clips in here, there, and there, and then we can hook up our lower radiator hose and our other transmission hose. Go there, and we're going to put a new clamp on that. Okay, the bottom fan shroud is up. All the hoses are hooked up on the bottom. The next step is to go to the top and do up the two fan shroud bolts. So something I've noticed is that these corners, the shroud's not sitting flush and it's allowing it to sit out. And I'm just going to cut this off right here in the corner at the top, because the radiator sticks out a little bit at the top. Below that it should be fine. So right there we just nipped off the corner. This could sit a little bit more flush, and did the same thing there. All our hoses hooked up, everything back in. All we got to do is reconnect our throttle body and intake tube and refill everything. We got to check the transmission fluid as well, because there are lines that go to the radiator that we switched over, so we're probably gonna have to add a little bit of transmission fluid. Yeah, and we're gonna need to fill the whole radiator with the engine coolant. Here's just another shot of the finished product before we refill it. We've got lots of room with that notch. I didn't have to cut quite as much, but should be fine. I did cut about an inch off this hose and an inch off that hose, just because with the radiator closer to the engine, they were a bit long and kinking a little bit. So we'll fill the rad and check the transmission fluid. Something to note here, this is the CSF rad cap, which is a different style than this cap. So we want to keep our OEM cap. Don't use this one. It's not going to work properly. I think that this one will return back to the tank, whereas this one won't. And we're going to use a no-spill funnel. You can get these on Amazon. I'll put a link down below. And we're going to use the green connector on this to fill. You can also use one of the other connectors and fill from there, but I found this works better. This is a higher point, but they're pretty much the same. So just fill this, and you're gonna watch the coolant tank. So you're gonna fill until the coolant is at the max cold, and we'll fill the radiator directly. Filling it this way takes a lot longer to fill up the radiator. Okay, watch and listen for water coming out of the bottom. I'm using the AMSOIL low toxicity. This is manually mixed, 50-50. This is a bigger radiator, so there's going to be a bit more in here. I'm going to check for leaks underneath. Okay, we can hear the air starting to come out, and the reservoir starts to fill up. So we just filled this at the rad until the coolant filled the reservoir to the max fill line. So we're going to leave it as it is with the 2 caps off, run the truck, get it up to temperature, idle it, get all the air out, add more fluid if it starts going down. Imagine it has to fill all the hoses if it hasn't already. So we'll keep an eye on it and add more as needed. We're going to turn the truck on, run it for a few seconds, turn it off, check the transmission fluid, see if it's okay. Not much transmission fluid came out when I ran it before, but this rad will be empty. It won't have any transmission fluid in it. Our transmission fluid is pretty much bang on in the cold range between the 2 notches. And the hash marks is the hot range. But you're supposed to check it when it's hot. So later I will drive the truck, get it warmed up and check it hot. And the coolant, I forgot, with this rad cap off, it just it pushes all the fluid up in here and drains the reservoir. So we're going to throw that cap on and try again, see what happens. We've got no leaks, so I'm happy. We're going to check underneath the truck again in the morning before we put the skid plate back on, and we should be good to go. So please like and subscribe. I've got more content coming your way.